Hello everyone, I am Laethas and welcome back to another video, and today I have another manga first impressions, this time for the new series, or at least kind of new series by the same mangaka that did Pandora Hearts. This is her new series that is just now releasing, published by Yen Press, the case study of Vanitas, or Vanitas. Don't know exactly how it is pronounced, but I have read the first 3 volumes, which just so happens to be the only 3 volumes that are out so far, with a 4th coming soon. But anyway, to get into the sort of first impressions of the volume, just to note, price, these are $13 volumes in Yen Press's standard format. Though these volumes are fairly thick, like you can probably see this volume, let me try and line it up with Tokyo Ghoul, slightly thicker than the Tokyo Ghoul volume, and volume 2 is especially thick. And the covers themselves are these nice matte finishes that are so nice. And sort of to get into like the more superficial aspects of the series, it has a nice sort of steampunky setting, which I really like. It's set in Paris. If you're looking for more of a European setting, this is where that is taking place. Also, things to note, there are vampires in this series, if you did not know that already, and with that comes certain sort of givens with how vampires sort of operate as a supernatural entity that creators like to throw into their works. So there isn't a whole lot new added in terms of the vampire mechanics, other than names being important. Sort of in the context of the story, there's reasons behind that. I don't want to sort of spoil it, but let's just get into the artwork, which I think is quite fantastic. You can just see from the panels right there, Jun Mochizuki is very good at what she does, and this series is no exception, with fantastic artwork, I might say. Other things to note, this is a shonen series, so with that comes standard shonen antics that you find in many other shonen. Depending on who you are, that is either going to be a non-issue or potentially a deal-breaker. In my opinion, there aren't a whole lot in this series when compared to other series, so it's relatively, I want to say, mild. It's not on the low end, but it's not on the high side either. Probably lower than mid-tier in terms of the shonen antics that can be annoying. So I personally am bothered by those kinds of things, but you might not be. And considering that I didn't find it to be a huge issue, that's probably a good thing, even if you are somewhat bothered by these issues, is that I didn't have an issue with them, and I normally do. To also sort of get into another aspect of the series, one thing that I didn't personally like is I felt one of the characters, her name is John, and she's supposed to be sort of a representation, or maybe the embodiment of Joan of Arc. I don't think she's actually supposed to be like Joan of Arc or Jeanne d'Arc, but she has her name. I feel her character is incredibly inconsistent, and so that is a little bothersome to me personally. I don't know if any of you have read the series and have experienced the same issue, but her character does not seem to behave very consistently between volumes and situations, so it's a little off-putting for me, but overall that isn't really much of a big issue. Other things that the series tends to do very well would be it does a very good job of giving you a mystery, and then, like, so you have the big mystery that, you know, isn't resolved, but then you have little mini hints and details, little mysteries, sort of information about the characters that is withheld for a good amount of time before it is revealed at a very good moment. It doesn't leave you hanging for very long, and it typically gets to the point very quickly when it comes to these sort of character quirks or development or their backstories, that kind of thing. So it does a very good job of that, and the pacing overall I feel is very strong. That being said, the volumes, not only are they thicker and longer, there's a decent amount of dialogue per page. I wouldn't call it high volume density, but it is, I would say, a little bit more than sort of mid-tier density. It's sort of in the upper, like not high, but sort of like the mid to high range of volume or text to page length. So it is a little bit longer to read than maybe a something else, but it isn't super long to read like Masamune work, for instance. So it does take a decent amount of time to read, but it doesn't feel incredibly long. All the dialogue choices, they seem to be meaningful instead of just sort of meandering, except for a little bit of the shonen antics that are a little bit bothersome to me. I feel they tie the series down a little bit, but that's more of a pet peeve for me personally. Another thing to note is that the series does a very, very good job at addressing its main characters and sort of who they are and what their personalities tend to be like. This series has 2 male main protagonists, if you're curious, and Jun Mochizuki does a very good job of explaining sort of who they are and what their sort of goals and intentions are. Not necessarily from a macro sense or in the long term, but in the short term, she definitely makes a very good point to show us what the characters are trying to do and why they are trying to do those things in the moment. So that is a plus. There isn't much that feels out of place in the volume itself. The shonen antics, as I've mentioned before, which also couples in with the sort of comic relief moments that sort of jut in and out that I feel are very out of place for certain scenes, but I feel that sort of comes along with a lot of different shonen series and is not limited to this one. But other than that, most of the sort of what is going on feels very in place, and everything seems to have a purpose in the story, with the exception of those things that I mentioned. And the other big thing being John, I feel, being a very inconsistent character. She sort of behaves very oddly, as opposed to her other appearances in the series. And so it's a little harder to pinpoint exactly why she behaves the way she does. But again, that's really the only major flaw that I found so far is that. The other things I'm leaving up to, it has yet to be revealed yet as to sort of confusing and sort of odd. We have our main antagonist, Charlatan, who is sort of a mystery. We don't really know his motivations or why he's doing the things that he's doing. So that is up to interpretation as of now. Though I don't feel that is necessary to be revealed this early on in the story. The mangaka has also done a very good job of giving our main character, Vanitas, or one of our main characters, Vanitas, a lot of characterization and sort of the way he acts and the way he sort of does business, the way he tells lies and the way he tells the truth, and how other characters are able to pick up on that without necessarily being able to not dissect, but get that information out of him. Another thing to note about the series is that it seems to be that we are caught up to it for the most part. Volume 4 just came out in Japan. Don't know when it's coming out here, but that would mean that there's going to be a long time in between volumes, as typically happens with series we catch up with. Not to mention that this appears to be a monthly series, since chapter lengths tend to be incredibly long, if you can see those numbers right there. The first chapter of manga is always longer, usually double the length of normal issues, but the chapters tend to be in that 40 to 50 page range, which is a monthly magazine standard, so it takes even longer to get volumes out. So it may be a while before this series gets completed. It just sort of depends on how long it actually ends up being. And from what I've been given, I would estimate, from the information I have on me right now, that it would probably be between 8 and 14 volumes, just based on my knowledge of other series and how they sort of progress. Then again, this is just speculation and a guess. I really have no idea how long it could be. It could be could end at volume 6. It could go all the way on to 70 volumes. I have no idea, but that would be my guess for the length of the series. And yeah, if you have your opinions on this series, or you thought I got something wrong, or you have an explanation as to why I feel John behaves very oddly, you can leave those in the comments down below. Any other questions, comments, concerns, issues, anything like that, you can leave those down there as well. If you'd like to see more first impressions in the future, or maybe reviews, analysis, that kind of thing, leave those suggestions down in the comments section. And always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and share. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, there's a link to that in the description. Also, if you'd like to keep up to date with all of my content, you can hit that subscribe button. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I am Laethas. Goodbye.